Hello, welcome. Today I'll be showing you how to improve your comics. We're going to be using PROCREATE in this tutorial, but you could use pencil and paper if you want to follow along. To start with, we already have a rough comic idea prepared. Even if it's not perfect, it's a good thing that we got it down on the paper already. This way, we already know what we are going to draw, and we could test the story before we spend any additional time on the page. Usually, we only have a very limited amount of space to tell our whole story, have some character moments, and a joke. In this example, we only have 4 panels to tell the story, but we also want our audience to feel our whole world rather than just going from point A to point B in the script. So what I'm going to do here is to resize the characters, making them smaller in the page, in some of the panels so that we can explore more of the background. So now we can tell just a little bit more with our drawings. You can see here that I've also resized some images a little bit larger, like the butterfly on the bottom left-hand corner. This way is because we have different variety of sizes of our characters in these drawings. So different shots available, like a medium shot, a wide shot, a close-up shot. This way, our comic would just be a little bit more visually interesting. One other thing is at the very beginning, you can see that our characters were standing straight up, and the butterfly was facing, was completely upright. So something that I'm doing is I'm tilting the butterfly so that she looks like she is more in motion. So I'm having her body point towards the direction that she is going in. Now let's take a look at our very first panel, the top left-hand corner. You're going to see that there's 2 characters. We have the snail and we have the butterfly. And currently, the panel looks a little bit flat, so how do we make it look 3-dimensional? What I'm going to do is I just created a new layer, and I'm going to, in red, draw some guidelines for myself and create a vanishing point. The vanishing point is a guideline for size, so things that are further away are going to vanish into that dot, and things that are closer up are going to look larger. Now, this is extremely useful if you were drawing buildings and roads and streets, because things that have hard, sharp edges will definitely need to use guidelines like this. So in the distance, I drew some mountains, I drew some grass. The grass I drew very tall because our characters are miniature. So take into mind the size, the relative size of your characters. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to pull up a reference of my characters. And this is something that I drew beforehand, right? Whether in my sketchbook or specifically designed. In this case, I pulled up a reference from a previous comic strip to make sure that my characters are consistent throughout each comic. If you are just starting your first comic strip, I recommend that you design your characters separately first, outside of the comic, because this way you can explore different looks, trials, and errors until you fall in love with your final design. Now, as I'm drawing the character's body, I'm making sure that the character is kind of bent towards the direction that they are going, instead of just being like an ice cream cone shape for the body of the butterfly. It's bent a little bit and curved a little bit towards the direction she is moving in. And because I already planned out the bubbles and have the story written, then it's very easy for me to decide what facial expression my character should have in this moment. Since she has 6 legs, there's a variety of poses that we can do. If she's angry, we could have her crossing her arms right now. But since she's happy, she could use all 6 of the legs to show her happiness more than a 4-legged creature could. As you can see, I am hatching, or I am sketching a few more times the wings, the size of the wings, and adjusting the drawing as I go. It's going to be very hard to draw it perfectly right the first time. Um, and as I move on, you're going to see that when I draw the snail, I'm trying to find a way to make the snail cute, right? And relatable and more animal or human like, since a snail is not typically something that we see day to day or think of as cute when we first imagine them. So what I'm doing is I added a almost like little feet at the bottom of the snail to make this snail feel a little bit more relatable to us two-legged humans. Um, and Wink, who did the original rough for this drawing, did an amazing job because now all I had to do was copy the facial expression that he already had and just push it a little bit more to make it even more funny or relatable. So now comes drawing the environment and the grass. Um, Based on just previous experience, my hand just started drawing tall, long grass, right? But sometimes there's not any planning behind this. So the shapes are very amorphous. Um, it's not cohesive based on a larger picture, if that makes any sense. So what I'm doing is trying to plan out some shapes of the ground. So whether they are walking past moss balls or larger shrubbery, because plants tend to grow together in groups and not just be all over the place, right? So now I kind of blocked out circular tufts of grass because I went outside and I saw these kind of grass when I went to a garden. And now I can take the same grass that I'm drawing. It's going to be different, not that one's better than the other, but it's just different. And give this environment this um, lumpy, lofty shape. Now, once you've moved on to a more polished phase of your drawing, something that can help it stand out are the details. This is because in real life there is a variety of sizes to things. So when we have a big plane, adding a small details to things make things look more realistic. So for example, a cat is broken down into different shapes. A sphere for the head, a cone for the mouth, but then the cat also has eyes that are smaller than the head, and even smaller than that are the whiskers, right? But smaller than the whiskers are the little whiskers or the little long pieces of hair that the cat has above their head, kind of like their eyebrows. Now, the kind of path that our snail is on is part of the story. Um, in the last panel, our snail was burning. So instead of on a mossy path, we're going to put him on a rocky, concrete, hard path. So this is why texture in our drawings matters so much. Looking into the next panel, I see that we already have this drawing of our butterfly so often already. So something that we can do is change the camera and the perspective completely to show a new information. In our previous comics, we've already had our butterfly character be very happy and that she's using that, of course, like facial expression, right? So we want to show something new about her or show a new moment to keep the comic fresh. So what I'm choosing to draw right now is what if we are drawing from the snail's perspective or from a downwards up perspective. In the story, we were just saying, isn't the sunlight beautiful? Or sorry, isn't the sunlight the best? So we want to show the sunlight. And in this panel, we have the opportunity of showing how beautiful the sunlight really is. Now you can see instead of drawing the clouds. This is a moment where you can actually start by painting in the clouds, and it will be a lot easier to get that feeling that you want. So, especially since I'm using digital, I can just go ahead and block in some cloud shapes that have that fluffy texture. And before I draw in the butterfly and the snail, I'm just going to put in the shapes of the characters because I imagine that we will be seeing their shadow, since the sunlight is coming from top down. Now that we have the shapes blocked out, it's actually a lot easier to draw our characters. Now, I'm drawing a butterfly, but imagine if you were drawing a human. A human using a bow and arrow, a human being bent over trying to grab something, right? So this way, we can test out the pose and see if it's readable before we add the details. Now, what makes our characters feel so alive in this world, or in any animated show, is the variety of facial expressions and the poses and positions that they do as they live about their life. So I'm going to take this opportunity. She's saying, "Isn't sunlight the best?" I want to see her really feel that emotionally. This is where the acting comes in. So, using her 6 legs, I'm going to have 2 of them raise up into the sky, as she's basking in a way, and then the other 4 legs, I'm almost having her swing, to give this playful but also worshiping energy about her. She's a butterfly, so the really fun part is we can be quite creative with this part. As you can see, I'm drawing layers and layers just to get that right facial expression that I am looking for. Um, Especially when we are looking from a down-up angle, I'm making her antennas a little bit smaller than usual. I'm making her face a little bit bigger to do foreshortening. So the easy way to remember foreshortening is anything that is further away is always going to be smaller. Things that are closer to us will always be bigger. It's like your camera phone angle when you accidentally turn it on, right? In this way, know that drawing is very mathematical. It's very skill based, but it's very easy to learn once you're able to break things down into the shapes and the math of it. Now let's learn how to make appealing word bubbles. How do we tell that our word bubbles actually are large enough for our text? So something that I like to do is make sure that I can fit almost another word in the space between my text and the word bubbles. Using that same font size, I'm going to see if I can fit another H in between the word bubbles and, the edge of the word bubble and the text itself. Now, if I can't fit something in between that space, then it's starting to look a little bit claustrophobic. So I'm going to make my bubble just a little bit bigger. Now, just like how I bent the body of the butterfly in towards the direction that she is going in, I'm going to do the same thing for the word bubble, tails, to make it seem a little bit more dynamic, more energetic mostly. Now looking at the bottom left panel, the third panel, we see that the original drawing was actually a great idea, a look of concern. I think since the help is so immediate, we can change the facial expression to be more of a shock, like, oh, I didn't really expect that. So I'm still using the same downward eyebrow expression, but this time just adding the shock in there. Now I'm also changing the body to be more bent and towards the direction she was originally moving in, so that there is more of a motion in this drawing. Now, to prevent my drawing from looking way too stiff, what I'm going to do is have the antennas of my butterfly go the opposite direction of the way she is moving. So, some follow-up action against the movement. So this would apply for like ears or tails of any animals that you draw. Um, Something different about this panel is I made this character larger in this panel than the other ones. Why? Two reasons. First, we want our readers to be surprised by what's going to happen next. So that's why we have a very close up shot. We want to see the character's reaction of, what's going on, but not see the snail at all. But the original drawing was already pretty pushed in, so why are we making it even more close up? It's because this way there's even less to draw. So imagine if this was an animated show, then we would be saving the animators a lot of time. And finally, it adds a lot of variety to our image and makes it even more interesting than before, a reason you already know. And so, using that same principle, we're going to make the snail in the last panel much larger than before. We don't even need to draw the butterfly again, right? Especially since we had such a huge focus on her in the first three panels. Um, and as you can see, I'm playing with the different poses. In this instance, I drew the swirl on the wrong side because of the camera. So we want the camera to be on the left side of the character instead of the right side. This is because of a storyboarding principle and filmmaking principle called the 180-degree rule. This means that our camera is always going to be on the same side of the characters. Now imagine if we were in a theater. If we were to move and change seats from left side to right side of the stage, the position of the characters are still going to be the same. If I were to take my iPhone to take a zoomed in perspective of one of the characters, I'm still going to see everything from the same perspective, from the audience's perspective of the stage. But things get confusing if you were suddenly to move backstage. Now, this is all we have to do to improve this comic, at least. So, I hope that you feel more confident about improving your comic sketches and that you can see that drawing is very similar to math, especially when you have very simple characters. More complicated characters would just be built of more different shapes, so it's just a little bit more complicated. Now, if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.